So in this segment, we're going to be talking about how British government is basically putting out propaganda pieces within British newspapers in order to make it look like the government are doing a great job and that businesses are not being that impacted by Brexit. So this is propaganda. This is propaganda pushed by the newspapers, and a lot of these newspapers are, in my opinion, putting their credibility at risk by putting out stories like this. And I read stories that the amount that the government paid for these stories to be put out is around 250 million, but I can't verify that. I haven't found anything to verify that. So it would cost a lot of money for the government to do what they have done here. Taking out a web page from these newspapers and paying them a lot of money for multiple advertisements, 1, 2, 3, 4, as well as I think there's a few more as well. So this is propaganda. This is brazen propaganda, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. So how British business, this is paid by the government, by the way, just in case anyone wasn't sure about it. So how British business is going from strength to strength under the new trade rules. So the rules on trading with Europe have changed, but these British businesses, so these specific ones, are going from strength to strength under the new relationship with the EU. It's not costing them more or anything like that. Massive lies here. So on January 1st, the way we trade with the EU has changed. New rules and processes came in affecting firms that import or export to the continent. But while many companies have taken steps to prepare for the changes, some haven't. Whoa, it's a bit sneaky. It's a bit sneaky dissing people. Certain people who haven't, been prepared, and we'll talk about one of those specific people in a minute. But that could leave their businesses at risk of disruption. Here, firms have made the switch reveal their tips of how they adjusted. So, basically saying that this is advice from these three firms here. Sorry, I'm just adjusting my headphones. Being able to import smoothly is essential to what we do. With his business dependent on successfully importing and exporting millions of pounds worth of goods each year, Martin Stemp was determined to ensure it continued to run smoothly after Brexit. So, the owner of RS Aqua, an oceans technology firm, in Portsmouth, secured a government grant to put his staff on a training course to learn how to complete new customs declarations. Have all businesses that do imports and exports had access to the same funding? Because if not, something dodgy is going on here. The company also spoke to its shipping companies and suppliers and changed their paperwork to make sure it complied with the new rules. Having exported out of the EU before, Martin found the process quite familiar, so he was lucky in the sense that he already knew the kind of rules, before. So, he had an advantage here. But not everyone had that luxury. Having exported outside the EU before, blah blah blah. However, he warns you definitely need to plan in advance. You have to be prepared, and there's a lot to do. It is not to be sniffed at, but there's support around if you need it. I suggest working with the Department for International Trade. It has an export champions program, and talking to peers in your industry who are already exporting. So we'll talk about broadly why there are issues with this, but the fact is he sells technology, which it's not the hardest thing to export in the world. It's not live animals or anything like that, and we'll keep talking about that. So our first shipment under 24 hours, so this is someone else, with its shoes produced in Italy, belts and buckles made in Slovenia, and lampshades crafted in Austria, sustainable clothing company Aqua and Rock, so there's a theme going on here, couldn't have survived unless it adapted to the new rules. So I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for, if it hadn't, I wouldn't have a business if it hadn't. What does that mean? These people. In all, I work with 5 European countries and tend to export most to Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark and Belgium. So last September she began investigating the changes she needed to make to prepare for the end of Brexit transition period, which included getting an EORI number and changing the company's standard invoices. From January 1st, imports and exports have run smoothly. Our first shipment under the new rules from Amsterdam, and it arrived within 24 hours. The thing is, right, we're not doing customs checks and rules of origins checks on our side. So, the imports shouldn't be slowed down that much. So here, clearly she doesn't understand fully what's going on here. I haven't experienced any delays, even when goods come in via Dover. Up in Scotland, I haven't had any trouble. Lady, we haven't done customs checks or rules of origins checks yet. We've adapted and survived, and she hasn't talked about the issues exporting to Germany, the Netherlands, Denmark or Belgium. She's only talked about importing. So again, why they've just used this bit is very strange. I don't know if the interviewer just asked her these questions or if this is all that she wanted to talk about. It's very weird. So planning is the reason for our success. So this is to increase capacity control techniques. Recently picked up its Chinese factory, put it on a train across Siberia, and relocated it in mid Wales. So this is a weird one. So it's this commitment to success that led the company, which designs and manufactures electric motor control technology, to start planning 2 years ago for the Brexit transition period. We export to 77 countries, and we must be prepared, says Anthony Pickering. We make sure our supplies were ready and had contingency plans. Planning has been the reason for our success. But the thing is, right, none of these people export live animals, so they don't have to do things like, all the checks when it comes to vets and all that stuff. So all they've talked about here is a person who makes physical products that has no problems with imports because we haven't started doing checks on rules of origins and customs. A person who sells technology, which again doesn't have to go under SPS checks and all that stuff. And you've got here a guy who makes electric motor control technology. So again, another guy who sells technology, which I guess is a service. Again, our factories are full. So where is this factory? That's what I don't understand. Has been the reason for our success because we're reliant on our supply chain. Our factories are full. We're absolutely flat out with orders coming out of our ears. We have not missed a beat, and our business is continuing to evolve. So this guy, again, he sells motor control technology. So again, I don't know specifically what he's doing here, but this is, pretty brazen propaganda here, because if Brexit was such a success, you would talk about the industries that are having problems and have had their problems fixed by being prepared. Lamb, fish, all that stuff, along with other places. Also, you haven't even talked about the issues going on in Northern Ireland. None of these businesses export to, Northern Ireland. So, again, this is just pure fraudulence from, the government here. And I do wonder how much they paid of taxpayers' money. These companies are legit. I Googled one of them, so we know that for sure. But if we actually look at a person who does export live, fish, look at his issues and how the government has failed to help him. Let's listen to this man's interview.
It's been tough, obviously there's COVID at the beginning of the year, which affected us, the restaurant side of the business and the oyster sales. We were open over the summer, we were busy, like most coastal places, and then we shut again in November. For the oyster side of the business, the impact of Brexit has probably had more of an effect than COVID, I would say.
Brexit has had a bigger impact than COVID, and that's huge because we've seen, shutdowns of restaurants, etc. But he's saying here that Brexit has had a bigger impact than all of the shutdowns, the lockdowns, and also the impacts of, people's spending habits, in EU countries. So it's a pretty big statement here from this gentleman. But he's a guy in the industry who would probably know more than, but I wouldn't be surprised about some government ministers, to be honest.
We've got a business profile that was based on the advice given to us by DEFRA over the past 3 years, which always assured us that the bulk wholesale to France could go ahead.
So he was told by DEFRA for the past 3 years that this could go ahead, right? And this tweet, this from the BBC here, is from the 28th of February. So it was mid-February that he was told there was an issue. That's how late in the day DEFRA have left it to talk to this gentleman. So we can talk about that Aqua guy where, he got help from, the Department for International Trade really quickly. But this man got told 2 weeks before a shipment was meant to go out that he can't do it. He can't make the shipment. So what kind of position does it put him at? Rather than the government spending money on propaganda pieces, perhaps they should be looking at the people impacted by their stupidity and decisions and actually look at how to help them. Or if the fact is they can't help them, look at how they can support their business. Because the government have failed people that do live animal exports and food producers, etc. And amongst that, services and other people. So, this is just pure fraudulence from the government.
2 weeks ago, they've informed us that in actual fact, we can't do that now. So now I've got 100 tons of oysters sitting on the farm that I cannot sell into France and I can't sell domestically. We've kept the people going. We've furloughed people out when the tides aren't right and got them back on the farm to work because it's a farm and the oysters need tending, So it's either that or leave them and then you end up ultimately with a market that's unsellable. We've subsidised it from other businesses and we've taken out, obviously, the government loans for that. with the end in sight being that we can ultimately carry on exporting to France and sell those oysters domestically.
So what you can tell here, he's been put in an incredibly difficult situation where for the past 3 years, the government, DEFRA, have told him that he will be able to carry on going as he is going and do bulk exports to France. Then 2 weeks ago, he was told he can't do this. He can't do the bulk export. So this man's whole business has been upended by the government's actions here. So the government can put out fluff pieces like this in these papers. I've just closed it, but you saw what it was. And it's not just the Metro, it's the Independent, the so-called Independent right now. Should be called the sellouts really, because they've sold out to government money. So, not a big surprise here. Not a big surprise. It's not just them, it's the Daily Fail as well. I think they're the same articles, just slightly different headlines. These three business firms are flourishing. So are they doing better than they were before? Or have they had to hire more people in order to look at customs checks? Or have they had to put existing people to deal with customs checks, which has, ultimately cost them money? Is it better than it was before, or is it worse? You tell me. Absolute shambles. So, sorry, that's not relevant. So we go here to, the expert, Dr. Anna Jaworska, talking about was tempted to ignore this. First of all, not sure how I feel about the government posting ad features. I come from a country, I think she's Polish, where we had a lot of that under the previous regime and the current one. I'm not sure I would recommend it. It's a very dodgy thing to do. It's very propagandistic on the sly, where you're basically pushing, bribing news organizations to put out, stories that basically lie by omission, to put it gently. I love how one of the examples talks about how easy it was to import into the UK. All you need is an EORI number and changes to invoice. When the UK controls have not been introduced, something we've mentioned, yes, of course, there were not delays. Let's touch base in July, which, can't wait for that. Also, the article, like the government Brexit campaign, fails to mention rules of origin. And if these companies are not affected by rules of origin, solely import EU-made goods for the UK market, excluding Northern Ireland, these are exceptions, not the norm. Because if you're just importing stuff from the EU to manufacture in this country and turn it into something else, normally you're fine. So that's a non-issue. I also enjoyed the backhanded gaslighting, talking about how Brexit readiness was a key. This is absolutely true. Remember why a lot of companies didn't prepare on time, late guidance, COVID, the fact that you as a government chose not to mention non-tariff barriers, so like barriers like rules of origins and customs checks. Also the fact that the deal was done so late in the day and there was no implementation period for the new changes meant that literally within about 6 days, businesses had to figure out what they could or could not do, what changes there are. I'm genuinely happy to see these companies found the process easy and can continue to trade. I hope there are many more like that, but I see the other side of the story every day when I speak to my clients, because she's in the thick of it, because she is trying to help people. That's how, that's one of her things her business does, and have to tell them their products don't originate and tariffs are due. And that's not the only article like that that's popped up over the weekend. Seen people tweet about it. We've already talked about it. The fact that the government feels the need to push articles is frankly alarming. If things are genuinely going well, why bother? If they aren't, and the response is to pretend like everything is fine, which is the government's typical response, that's not great. It may also simply be an attempt to say that it's not all doom and gloom, but I don't know. Something about this makes me feel uneasy, which, I too feel that, because, the government is paying newspapers to put out propagandistic pieces, which are, frankly lie by omission, because they haven't talked about the issues that other companies are facing, like live animal exporters, services, how are they going to be impacted, etc. All they've done is cherry pick 3 businesses, one which sells one that sells technology, one that has no problems importing stuff, which is just weird, and another one that also is mainly technology based but seems to manufacture some things. So I don't understand. It's such a stupid thing to waste money on as well, especially when you put it in these newspapers. I get the Independent doing it. I don't know who reads the Metro typically. It's mainly people on the bus or the train, but putting it in the Daily Mail doesn't make sense, because Daily Mail readers think Brexit's going fine. So it's very weird. But yeah, if you want to see the reality of the situation for some people, look at, this gentleman, the issues going on with other fishermen around the country. You can see what the problems are. You speak to, people that export meat, you can see what the problems are. But at the end of the day, the government are choosing to lie and be misleading because they want people to believe everything is going great when it's not. So, I don't know what more to say about from this. Is basically the dog in the house that's burning meme. That's pretty much the UK at the moment, and it's only going to get worse in July. So, there's not much more to say apart from like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.